Dr. Sriharsha, shall I start?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'll start. Okay. Yes, I'll share my screen and hi, good evening, everyone. And I can see Professor Loigi. Good evening, sir. Maybe good afternoon to you. Maybe good morning. Thank you, sir. Thank you for attending this. And we are in the episode 9 of this Vertigo Talk series. So the theme of this series is basically I present complex cases which I see in my practice, and I have nothing to disclose an informed consent obtained from patients if I have shown their images and videos. And this is my personal experience, and I don't have much data to back up. At some places I don't have scientific data to back up my findings. So, coming to the learning objective of today's lecture, we are going to discuss something which is very relevant for this current era. This last 2 years we are facing this COVID pandemic. So we are seeing some patients who are suffering from dizziness. So I thought I'll compile those cases and present these cases. So let us discuss about COVID-19 and vestibular symptoms. I did some review of literature before presenting my 5 cases. I thought I'll review the literature regarding COVID-19 and neurological symptoms. So in my limited review, I found I didn't go extensively. I found few articles. The first one, the earliest article was in April 2020 from a study group in China, that is from Wuhan. Then second was like in May 2020 from a study group from UK. Then in Lancet Neurology in July. Then another article in 2 articles in August. And this ENT journal, this article specifically focused on COVID-19 and dizziness. It was a letter to editor, and these were the other articles where they basically studied COVID-19 and neurological symptoms. Then another in September 2020, December 2020. These are all, most of them are reviews. And in recently in Lancet Psychiatry, there was one review article about 6-month follow-up of patients with neurological symptoms. So these are the articles. This was from Wuhan in April 2020. Then another systematic review. This is another neurological associations of COVID-19 in Lancet Neurology. And then another review article. So this specifically focused on dizziness and COVID-19. I got only one article, but there might be more articles like that. And this was the latest one, which this is one study from India, like AIMS Uttarakhand. And this one was the study from UK, about 6 months follow-up of patients. And I included just now, half an hour ago, I included another study review I found. It's very interesting. And this also focused on the neurological complications of COVID-19. So around 25 to 84% of patients who suffer from COVID can have neurological manifestations, one or the other neurological manifestation. In this first article, they mentioned around 25%. This is study from Wuhan, China, and this French article mentioned 84% of the patients presented with headache. Maybe it was particular to that strain. So this was published in NEJM. Okay, and so this is how the COVID-19 pans out. Like the viral RNA is detected early, IgM antibodies second, and the IgG later on. And these are the common manifestations like cough, fever, tiredness, myalgia, headache. But of course, there are various case reports involving the various parts of neuraxis, that is encephalitis, myelitis, ascending this acute disseminated encephalomyelitis, GBS. Some patients presented with GBS as a COVID presentation. Cerebrovascular diseases in the form of stroke. Oh, I'm not able to. 1 second. Okay. Direct viral infection, para-infectious, post-infectious complications, and vascular complications. So these are some of the complications these are the diagnostic, clinical presentation, and neuropathogenesis in patients with COVID-19. Now coming to various features or diseases which that's how the COVID-19 can manifest. Our first is stroke, that is most commonly ischemic, and rarely it can manifest with hemorrhagic stroke. Then venous sinus thrombosis, there are case reports of cerebral venous sinus thrombosis, encephalopathy, meningitis, encephalitis, edema, acute transverse myelitis, GBS, critical illness neuromyopathy, rhabdomyolysis, anosmia, and dysgeusia, the alterations of taste sensation and loss of smell sensation. I'm just giving you a broad overview. We will go into the details of dizziness. And after recovery, many patients were found to have suffer from dizziness. Dizziness was the most common symptom post recovery in many patients with dizziness. It started along with the symptoms, initial symptoms, and it persisted in many patients. Headache is another very common neurological symptom post recovery. Fatigue is very common, brain fog, tingling numbness, dysgeusia, and loss of smell sensation, and myalgia. So these are the symptoms which are common post recovery. After the recovery from COVID-19, these symptoms were found in many patients. And it can involve a variety of neuraxis. It can involve the brain, it can involve the spinal cord, it can involve the peripheral nerves, and it can involve the muscles also. So it can involve all parts of neuraxis. And this is comparison between COVID-19 and the SARS, other viruses like MERS and the SARS virus. COVID-19 has got a bigger spectrum of involvement. It can cause variety of involvement which can encompass most of the parts of neuraxis. So this is one of the article where the common symptoms post recovery were 81% brain fog, 68% headache, 60% tingling numbness, 59% dysgeusia, anosmia 55%, and myalgia is 55%, and only anosmia being more frequent like in this particular 2+ strain than 2-, these. So these are the common symptoms which were found, and there were a lot of manifestations, like same thing I mentioned earlier, like these symptoms are very common in patients after recovery. And the pathogenesis which is mentioned is the SARS-CoV-2 like this virus has high affinity for these angiotensin 2 receptors, like ACE2 receptors. And this virus binds with these receptors which are present on cellular membranes, and the neurons which are highly they have the high concentration of these particular receptors. So these are the various areas which has high concentration of these ACE2 receptors, where the this particular virus can bind and cause the neurotropism and cause the neurological manifestations. And so dizziness and headache are the very common symptoms which are found in patients because of either direct infection or immune mediated injury or cytokine storm. So these are various pathogenetic mechanisms which are described in literature. And so, as I said, headache and dizziness are the most common neurological symptoms. And it is uncertain whether it is because of the direct effect of the infection on the nervous system or due to factors such as stress, fear, anxiety, I'm going to share my experience. Many of these patients, they get a lot of anxiety and stress because of the infection, and it triggers their migraine, and it can cause vestibular migraine. So, like there are various pathogenetic mechanism by which they can develop this headache and dizziness. And the largest study of this post-COVID dizziness, like post-COVID neurological symptom, they mentioned 25% had CNS symptoms, out of which 17% patient had dizziness and 13% patient had headache. So coming to headache, was it was seen in 82% patients in one of the French study, as I mentioned earlier. And the pathophysiology is different in different phases. In the acute stage, the headache could be related to the flu-like illness, migraine, or tension type headache. And the later stage, the headache could be because of hypoxia, systemic inflammation due to cytokine storm. And some patients, it could be because of meningitis, venous sinus thrombosis, or stroke. And so the character of headache, there are some studies which describe like bilateral, severe in intensity, frontal predominance. And in 62% patient, the headache occurred within 24 hours of illness. And 94% of the patients satisfied the criteria for headache attributed to systemic viral infection. And migrainous phenotype was seen in 25% patients, and nearly 50% patient had this like tension type headache phenotype. And many patients had disabling headaches, like even after recovery they had, after COVID-19 symptoms, the headache persisted and they had disabling headaches. And these are the various articles where they have mentioned the percentage of dizziness in patients after recovery, like 8% patients. And I will show you a few other articles where 17% in this Wuhan study, 9% and 7%. So during or after the COVID-19 infection, patients can have this dizziness. And this was the one of the review like regarding what are the different articles. So these are the different articles mentioning the dizziness after COVID. It ranged from 8%, 7% to 20% in different, 30% in different studies. And so the presence of dizziness did not depend on the whether the infection is severe or non-severe. So whether the patients had severe infection or a non-severe infection, there was no significant difference in the manifestation of this dizziness in these patients. And onset of symptoms was median duration of onset of symptom was 1 day. And there are various reviews which mentioned that there were patients who presented with dizziness as a primary manifestation of COVID infection. Of course, there were less number of patients, but dizziness can happen. Dizziness happened along with the other COVID-related symptoms in many of these patients. So coming to the pathogenesis of why these patients had dizziness, there were some proposed mechanism. One is neuroinvasive potential of this virus because of this binding to the ACE2 receptors, or that is the direct invasion, or it could be because of hypoxia, or could be hypercoagulopathy, or immune mediated, or it could be because of stress, anxiety, and fear which is created, can lead to vestibular migraine or triple PD symptoms. So that's what is pathogenesis of COVID, this dizziness in patients with after recovery from COVID. And in this particular one study, they mentioned there could be some patients who are developing these. There could dizziness could be non many articles they have mentioned dizziness is non-specific symptom, but it could be like indicating underlying vestibular etiology which is causing the dizziness. So it's very important to go into the details and try to find out a specific etiology which is causing dizziness in this particular group of patients. So then after this quick review of literature, I will start with my cases, and then I will present cases where I encountered patients where these patients had recovery from COVID-19, and they started developing this dizziness and which persisted. So I will start with my cases. The first one is like 35 years lady. She presented to me with spinning and unsteadiness, and the duration, some episodes were lasting for minutes, and many of most of the days she had continuous type of this unsteadiness lasting throughout the day, and it started from 2 months. So she also had a headache which was holocranial in location, and that was also from 2 months after the once she had this COVID-19 infection. She developed both these symptoms, and she felt pressure sensation in her head. It was associated with photophobia and phonophobia, and she had history of migraine from 11 years, and these were her triggers. But her migraine was very much under control before this COVID infection, and it got triggered, and it she had almost daily headaches after this infection. There was no history of COVID infection, there was no history of this motion sickness in past, no history of ear pain. She had right ear episodic tinnitus, which lasted for 5 minutes to days. She had hearing impairment from 2 years, like mild hearing loss, and she had episodic this right ear fullness. She had this symptom. She developed this symptom, that is agoraphobia. That is whenever she used to visit any mall, supermarket, or crowded places, she was feeling uncomfortable and dizzy. And another symptom she told was diurnal variation in her unsteadiness. That is, she felt good in the morning after waking up, and she felt worse in the evening. That was one of the part of her history, which was suggestive of something. We'll discuss that. So coming to her previous history, like in September 2020, she had sudden unprovoked fall, which was like a drop attack, like without loss of consciousness. And followed by, she had positional vertigo, which lasted for 2 to 3 days, more on turning to right side. And she consulted a physician, and she received some treatment, post which she had dizziness, which lasted for another 1 month. So I thought that she had maybe she had a drop attack. Could be it was a BPPV, or I'm not sure about what exactly happened that time. Maybe it was an attack of Meniere's leading to the drop attack, and she had dizziness for 1 month. So I thought that it could be post BPPV dizziness. Initially, the quality of dizziness was positional vertigo, and later on it was a constant one for 1 month, and she became all right. Now, in January 2021, she had infection, this COVID-19 infection, followed which she developed severe headaches and severe dizziness, daily dizziness. So I did this, I went into the details of her history. I did this PHQ-9, like patient health questionnaire 9, that is one of the screening questionnaire for depression, and GAD-7, like generalized anxiety disorder. There is one questionnaire which is for anxiety. So I did I took responses for these questionnaires, and her PHQ-9 score was 15, which amounts to moderate to severe depression, and GAD-7 score was 11, that amounts to moderate anxiety. So then I did this Niigata triple PD score. Her postural score was 5, her movement score was 9, and the visual score was 14. And according to, as per this article by Arata Hori and his group, Professor Arata Hori, if the score, visual score is more than 9, then it is very much 82% sensitive and 74% specific for the diagnosis of triple PD. So she had a very high visual score, which was indicating the diagnosis, and she also had agoraphobia, and she had history of diurnal variation. That is, she used to feel better in the morning and worse in the evening. So if we correlate all the points in the history, then we will go one by one. What are the different diagnoses in this particular patient? So this is her dizziness handicap inventory. She was severely handicapped with this particular symptoms like headache and dizziness. Her dizziness handicap inventory was 62. And let us analyze what are the different components. So she was feeling continuously frustrated because of the problem, and because of because of these problems, she was restricting her travel, and she was feeling dizzy in the supermarket. That goes in favor of visual vertigo, and that is a component of triple PD. And she was also feeling difficulty in getting into the bed and out of the bed. And she her social participation is reduced. She had difficulty in reading, which is another component of the visual score of Niigata triple PD score, and that is impaired in either vestibular migraine or triple PD. Then she also could not perform these activities, and she was afraid to leave home. And she was feeling the quick movements were triggering the dizziness. So even the vestibular migraine can trigger this positional component and can lead to this particular symptom. Even triple PD can have momentary fluctuations, aggravation after head movements. Then she had turning over the bed increased her problem. Strenuous household work or yard work increased her symptoms. Then she had difficulty for walking by herself, and even sidewalk increased her problem. She was having difficulty in concentrating. Difficulty in concentrating is a very important symptom of vestibular migraine. If you find this symptom, it is an indicator that you should keep it in mind if the other parts of history is correlating. Difficulty in focusing on the screens, difficulty in concentrating is a very common symptom I find in patients with vestibular migraine. Then difficulty in walking in the dark. Then this patient felt handicapped, and these were the other issues. So even the dizziness handicap inventory, there are these questions can point you towards some diagnosis. There are certain questions which indicate particular diagnosis. So this particular score was very high in this patient, that is 62, and her neurotologic examination was normal. So, to summarize, this patient had history of COVID-19. She had some vestibular illness in the past, but the current history is suggestive of vestibular migraine with triple PD, because she's having a very high visual score. PHQ-9 is indicating she has depression, and she has even anxiety. So patients don't present with one particular diagnosis. Many a times, in even in without the history of COVID-19, many a times we see patients who have a combination, cocktail of a variety of disorders, and they complicate each other. Like migraine will trigger triple PD, and triple PD symptoms can cause a lot of impairment of quality of life. It can lead to depression, anxiety. Depression and anxiety itself can trigger triple PD. So these disorders are interdependent, and they can trigger the symptoms of each other, and they can manifest at one point of time. The symptoms of anxiety might be predominant, and at other times the symptoms of triple PD or migraine could be predominant. So it's very important to treat the patient comprehensively. And in this patient, I suggested lifestyle modification because the patient had migraine. I started her on amitriptyline, 12.5 milligram after dinner. Started her on vestibular rehabilitation therapy for this visual vertigo, as well as this triple PD symptoms and vestibular migraine. And she is doing well with the treatment. So this is what I thought of in this particular patient. I don't say that I'm not sure whether COVID-19 was just like this infection. It happened and these symptoms started along with the infection and they persisted. So it could be a trigger similar to any other medical illness. Triple PD can get triggered by any medical illness. So even COVID-19 can trigger triple PD symptoms. It triggered the migraine. There are many studies which suggest that headaches are very common and migraine can get triggered because of infection, like COVID infection. So that was about the first case. Then coming to case number two, 45 years gentleman. He had history of this generalized anxiety disorder and like depression in the past, but which was very much under control. He suffered COVID infection in February, and he develops this severe headache and dizziness during this his infection. And this episode of severe headache and along with this dizziness lasted for a week. And the duration of the episodes of dizziness were 5 hours to 12 hours. So it was lasting for either 5 hours to 12 hours. So it was in hours. And he associated amongst his associated symptoms, he had severe headache, which was holocranial in location, pressure sensation, severe in intensity. It was associated with photophobia and phonophobia. And he had 10 episodes of headache in the 2 months, that is from 15th of February. So post his this infection, he never had migraine in the past. So he developed a migrainous headache, which has typical features of migrainous headache. And there were 10 episodes along with dizziness, which was lasting for hours in duration. So he was completely satisfying the criteria for vestibular migraine. And he had some toppings for the diagnosis of vestibular migraine. He didn't have history of migraine in the past, but there were some clues for the diagnosis of vestibular migraine. That is, history of motion sickness in childhood. He had pressure sensation in both the ears, and as I told earlier, this reduced concentration and focus is a very common symptom I see in patients with vestibular migraine. So in pizza, we have different kinds of toppings. So if we, in the history, if we get these toppings, they are in favor of the diagnosis of vestibular migraine. So these are very common associated features in a patient with diagnosis of like if you are uh, get these histories, think of vestibular migraine if you have ruled out any other causes for the vestibular symptoms. There was no hearing loss and tinnitus, no agoraphobia, no diurnal fluctuations. So the triple PD symptoms were not there, and there were no other cochlear symptoms. And his other current symptoms were dizziness, especially in the night time. This is one very peculiar symptoms I'm seeing in patients with. Out of my 5 patients, I have seen in 2 patients that they had severe dizziness in the night time, especially in the night time. I don't know whether it is because of post-traumatic stress disorder, like because of the trauma of undergoing through infection, they're getting panic attacks in the night time, which is increasing their anxiety and leading to dizziness. But this particular patient was like suffering from sleeplessness and dizziness, especially in the night time. He was restless, and currently his headache symptoms were reduced. Like when he presented to me, he had multiple episodes, but later on his frequency was reducing when he consulted me. And this was his DHI, that is, it was around 22. So he was feeling frustrated because of the issues. He was not able to travel, and he had difficulty in getting into and out of the bed, and he had difficulty in reading, which is a which can happen in visual the vestibular migraine. Then he impaired quality of life, leading to restriction of his activities. Then he had difficulty in concentrating. I told you, like if you see in the diagnosis of these vestibular disorders, is mainly it lies into the history, and the more questions you ask, more likely that you are going to get the diagnosis. And there are certain questions which are specific for certain disorders. So one of them is this: difficulty in focusing and concentrating is one of the very common symptom of vestibular migraine. So in this particular patient, I was thinking of vestibular migraine, and there was nothing to suggest he had triple PD symptoms, and he was suffering a lot because of these symptoms. And this was his GAD like 7, and this PHQ-9, and he was getting these thoughts of he would be better dead or hurting himself several days. So that's a very important question to assess the depression. So if we look at the score, he had a symptom suggestive of moderate depression, and he had moderate anxiety because of this issue. So, let us summarize what he is suffering from. What sequence of events he had. He had baseline anxiety and depression, and he suffered this COVID illness, which triggered this migraine, vestibular migraine, and his underlying anxiety and depression went up, like it increased in severity, and he started getting these panic attacks with dizziness in the nighttime, and which led to the sleeplessness. So that's what I thought of, because his brain imaging was normal, his neurological examination was normal. So after the illness, COVID illness, he it triggered vestibular migraine symptoms, and it triggered his anxiety and depression. So in this like last Vertigo talks episode 8, I discussed about this particular thing, that psychiatric, if a person is having psychiatric disorder, if they suffer from a vestibular disorder on the top of their baseline psychiatric disorder, it can complicate this vestibular disorder can complicate their psychiatric disorder. Psychiatric disorder can become very severe, and it can start manifesting as dizziness and delay the recovery from the vestibular disorder. And last time, even I discussed about these things, like primary psychiatric disorder can lead to vestibular symptoms. Vestibular disorders can lead to a secondary psychiatric disorder or functional dizziness. Just now, we have seen the vestibular disorder can complicate the psychiatric disorder, and it can become severe and starts manifesting as dizziness. And psychiatric disorder, they can trigger the functional dizziness also, and they can coexist. I have shown you like both the examples. If you look at case number 1, case number 2, there is a coexistence of psychiatric disorder and vestibular disorder, as well as in the first case there was functional disorder as well, triple PD. In the second case, only we have seen the psychiatric disorder and the vestibular disorder. So, coming to the treatment of this particular patient, I suggested lifestyle modification for the migraine. I asked him to, as far as possible, to avoid the triggers for the migraine. I started him on amitriptyline and with magnesium, started him on vestibular rehabilitation therapy. And lately, like last week, I have seen him. Unfortunately, he didn't start this amitriptyline. He like it was very difficult to convince him regarding the treatment, and he was not convinced about the diagnosis. So he didn't take the treatment for with amitriptyline, and last week I have seen him, and he developed this persistent visual aura symptoms without infarction. His MRI brain is normal, but he has developed a lot of aura symptoms without even headache. And uh, I showed all the patients who present with visual aura symptom. I show these pictures. I'll show to all of you, so that like how visual aura looks like. It can Patients can have these flashing lights. Patients like zigzag lines. The patients, as a part of migraine aura, they can have zigzag lines. They can have these flashing lights, which can blindness of that area. Then the blind spot can be it can start with a very small spot, and it increases slowly in diameter. This over a period of time, this increases in diameter. This is how we can differentiate it from retinal artery infarction or a TIA. In patients with migraine, it slowly it increases in size. But in case of like branch retinal artery occlusion or retinal artery infarction, it happens suddenly. And these are the zigzag lines. These are the scintillating scotomas, which can be seen. And the other types of like visual auras the patients can experience is field defects. These are the field defects which can be seen in patients with migraine aura. I'm just showing this because we are discussing about in this particular patient had visual aura. So I'm just showing you various variety of the aura symptoms. This is a blind spot. Here you can see this flashing light, and there is a blind spot here which is persistently at the same spot. Again, this is the scintillating scotoma with zigzag lines. Then patients can have micropsia, especially the people like children can have micropsia as a manifestation of like migraine aura. They can even have macropsia as a manifestation of the things might appear bigger than they are, or the things can appear smaller than they are. Like it can happen in patients with migraine. And these are the scintillating scotomas which can be seen in patients with migraine. And of course, the other type of aura is sensory aura, which the patients can perceive as a sensory symptom, which slowly progresses and involves the whole hand, and then it can involve the face also. So that is about the sensory aura. And the other aura, we know that migraine with like basilar migraine, which is known as now it is called as migraine with brainstem aura. The patients can have these symptoms like vertigo, ataxia, tinnitus, dysarthria, diplopia, and the hemiplegic variety. So just like I told about this because it was in this particular patient, I found this patient suffering from visual aura. So in the case two, we have seen that post-COVID, the patient had severe anxiety, like depression, vestibular migraine, and persistent aura without infarction. Okay. Now coming to the case three, 44 years lady, spinning vertigo, feels like walking on a water, and duration of vertigo was lasting for 1 minute. And from it started from 3 days. She presented from 3 days, and she also had positionally triggered attacks on getting up and lying down. Say this, these attacks were positionally triggered, and a similar episode she had in the past like 3 times in 9 years. First episodes 9 years ago, second episode 5 years ago, third episode 3 years ago. And she had this migrainous variety of headache which also started like headache which was holocranial associated with phonophobia, photophobia. Earlier the frequency was once a month. She was having episodic tinnitus, which is, I told you, it is a one of the topping for vestibular migraine. Right here, ear hearing impairment, which was also episodic. Reduced focus and blurring, like reduced focus is a very common symptom, I told you, in vestibular migraine. These were her triggers for this headache, and no agoraphobia, and the symptoms were again more in the night time. This is something peculiar I'm seeing in these patients. This is second case where I found that patients had symptoms more in the night time. They had severe anxiety and dizziness in the night time. Then positional testing showed, initially I thought of BPPV in this particular patient, but when I did her positional testing, the positional testing was not showing any specific nystagmus which is correlating with the canal. So it was non-localizing positional nystagmus, which we commonly see in vestibular migraine. So and this I did her this PHQ-9, which was suggestive of mild depression, and there was no anxiety. Like the patient didn't have anxiety, but the dizziness handicap inventory score was 56. So she was suffering from severely from this dizziness, which was restricting her activities. Then I did her this scoring, that is Nigata triple PD score, and the visual score was 6, which was not going in actually in favor. Like it should be more than 9. It becomes very sensitive and specific for the diagnosis. She had more of a movement score, like her dizziness worsened on movements, and postural score was also higher than the visual score. And even the total score, if it crosses more than 29, it goes more in favor of triple PD. So she had something called I label these days as triple PD trait. Like these patients, if they are not taken care of, if their underlying vestibular disorder is not taken care of properly, that is vestibular migraine in this patient, then they can have progression of this triple PD trait, and it can become full blown triple PD. That's what I think of. We will take opinion from Professor Luigi also. In this particular patient, to summarize, patient had history of COVID-19. Patient, I feel that he had more of a positional vertigo after the because of this vestibular migraine, and patient had triple PD trait and mild depression. So if this patient we didn't treat early, like patient presented within 3 to 4 days of her illness, if we don't treat them early into these symptoms with migraine prophylaxis, vestibular rehabilitation therapy, there is likely chance that this triple PD trait might get converted into full blown triple PD, and this mild depression can convert into full blown depression, and even the anxiety can increase, because as the symptoms accumulate, as the dizziness increases, the patient can develop all these symptoms. So it's very important take home message from this patient that we have to treat the patients early and try to categorize which type of disorder the patient is suffering. Because of if the patient is suffering from headache and dizziness, what is the exact underlying etiology? Is it fitting into any particular like disorder like vestibular migraine or any other disorder? And accordingly, we can treat the patient and give good quality of life to the patient. Patient was reluctant to start amitriptyline, and I started the patient on lifestyle modification and magnesium, and she's feeling better with this intervention. Now coming to case 4, this particular gentleman, 29-year gentleman, presented with unsteadiness, momentary flares of unsteadiness lasting for seconds and from 1 month, which was aggravated by upright posture, like waking up and walking. And so I told the triggers were walking at natural pace and quick head movements triggered the problem. And again, this patient had like the best friend of dizziness is I would say headache. Like this patient had headache, and the characteristic of headache were holocranial, occipital, non-throbbing, moderately severe, increased on movement, which is a feature of migraine, but there was no associated photophobia, phonophobia, and it was daily from 1 month. Like the patient was having this dizziness, and there was no history of migraine in the past. And the triggers for this, but what happens, the patients usually deny his history of migraine. They underplay their headaches, and they call them as normal headaches many a times, which they if we they primarily present with dizziness, and you start asking them about headache, and they are not much interested in giving that history. And then when you present them this questionnaire and about the lifestyles, what are the lifestyle factors which can trigger your headache, then they start mentioning, yes, these things: lack of sleep, air pollution, excessive use of electronic devices, they can trigger their whatever normal headaches they call. Then again, this patient had this symptom like reduced concentration. Like reduced concentration and focus is very common symptom of vestibular migraine. But yeah, in this particular patient, there was something else. I would discuss that. Patient had severe fatigue, like severe fatigue. He was telling he was not able to continue his activity. 1 second, just a minute. Low battery. Just a minute. I will connect the charger. Yeah. So the patient had this history of memory loss. Patient had this history of fatigue, severe fatigue, memory loss, tremors, sudden fear while driving, and there was no tinnitus, ear pain, and fullness. But like patient had severe fatigue, he had unrefreshing sleep, he was suffering from headache, he was suffering from dizziness. So I just went into this diagnostic criteria of this chronic fatigue syndrome, which can happen after any viral infections. And patient had severe fatigue, although not longer than 6 months. He had headache of a new type and new pattern. Patient had unrefreshing sleep and severe significant impairment in short-term memory or concentration. So I thought that he is developing this trait of chronic fatigue syndrome in this particular patient. And in his past history, in the past history of this particular patient had head injury in 2012, and post which he had dizziness which lasted for 4 to 5 years. After this particular head injury, he had dizziness along with this symptom of agoraphobia, and he had panic attacks and post-traumatic stress disorder after this head injury. So maybe this patient had this head injury which led to PTSD as well as triple PD symptoms that time. But he was asymptomatic, as far as in the current episodes. Before this COVID infection happened and he developed headache and dizziness, he was all right. He was not having these symptoms. So I did his PHQ-9 and GAD-7. The PHQ-9 score was 17, which indicates moderately severe depression. The GAD-7 score was 11, which indicates moderate anxiety. So the patient had moderate anxiety and moderately severe depression. So again and again, I would like to emphasize this thing that in Vertigo episode 8, last episode, I emphasized all my cases were related to psychiatric dizziness. So it's very important to address the emotional component of the patient because they might be suffering from an obvious disorder like migraine or vestibular neuritis. But it's very important that we address their underlying emotional status, because if we don't address their emotional status, don't treat it, then there is chance that their underlying disorder worsens despite of proper treatment for the structural or cellular disorder. The patients may not improve, and it can lead to a lot of frustration in terms of like patients' quality of life. And it's very important to give this questionnaire. I have seen patients crying while filling this questionnaire because many a times we patients we cannot determine their depression anxiety status on face value. It's very important to offer this particular questionnaire and exactly localize how much quantify how much anxiety and depression the patients are suffering from, and we can monitor also in their visits. We can refer the patient to psychiatrist. Now, in this particular patient, the DHI score was 28. So, in our practice, we can get a patient who is suffering from the same disorder, but the different patients might have different DHI, this score, dizziness handicap inventory of the same disorder patient. For example, a patient who has, for example, vestibular migraine. Different patients might have different suffering, like emotional suffering, physically suffering, and the functional impairment might be different in different patients. So it's very important to assess how much the patient is suffering from that particular disorder. It's not, the treatment is not same for every patient with the same disorder. We have to also assess their emotional component, how much functional component they have, whether they are developing triple PD symptoms, whether they are developing symptoms of depression or anxiety. And treatment is accordingly is important. For example, if a patient of migraine has vestibular migraine, has a very high like a PHQ-9 score, suggesting depression. If we start beta blocker, topiramate, or flunaricin in this patient, it's likely that their depression is going to worsen, and the patient is not going to feel better. Their migraine can improve, but their underlying depression can worsen. So it's very important to do this scoring and then decide the treatment. Like we can offer antidepressant if the PHQ-9 is more. It's better to give antidepressant rather than giving the other group of medications. So to summarize, in this particular patient, the patient had COVID-19, history of COVID infection, probable vestibular migraine. Because it was unsteadiness was lasting for seconds, it was not lasting for hours as per the definitive criteria. I think that patient is having a trait of chronic fatigue syndrome, as I have seen the patient early into the illness. I can't call him as chronic fatigue syndrome, but it can happen after COVID infection, and depression and anxiety the patient was suffering from. So in this particular patient, again, my favorite medication, that is amitriptyline, I started the patient on lifestyle modification and magnesium. I will discuss the role of magnesium in the at the end when I finish. There was some question on that, and I referred the patient to a psychiatrist because it's very important at this stage, to address his emotional status, because he should not develop full-blown symptoms of chronic fatigue and depression. Coming to my last case, 66 years lady presented with imbalance, continuous lightheadedness with momentary flares. So this patient had two types of symptoms. One was positional vertigo, and another was imbalance, like while walking, and there were momentary flares of that imbalance. And she wakes up from sleep with this symptom. She was telling me that as soon as she wakes up in the morning, she is dizzy. So this history is also important. If the patient is all right when they wake up, and then as the day progresses, if they feel dizziness, then it goes in favor of triple PD. But as soon as they wake up, they feel dizzy. If it is a spinning quality, most likely it could be BPPV. But if it is if it is associated with headache and other symptoms which are suggestive of vestibular migraine, it is very commonly seen in vestibular migraine also. And she had a positional variety of this dizziness, and it was worsening while watching TV sometimes, and it was more in the night time. Again, this is the third patient where the symptoms were more in the night time and not in the day. Uh, I'm coming to her associated symptoms. She had sleeplessness, headaches. The headache was in occipitonuchal area, non-throbbing, mild in intensity, no phonophobia, photophobia, no nausea. Daily, after she recovered from her infection, she was having daily episodes of headache. No history of migraine in the past, and her age is 66. She didn't have history of migraine, but now, because after infection she was getting these headaches daily. But she had history of motion sickness in the past, and she had this particular triggers like emotional stress, excessive use of electronic devices in her history in the recent past. Her DHI score was only 8. Like it was, she was dizziness handicap inventory score was only 8, and her PHQ 9 score was sorry, this is a previous patient. Actually, her score PHQ 9 score was between 0 to 4, and even she didn't have anxiety. This particular patient. So I did her positional testing, and she had typical beating torsional nystagmus in right disc sulpi. I treated her as right posterior canal BPPV with a please maneuver, but that was not the end of her story. As I told you, she had multiple components of her dizziness. One was the positional vertigo, which I treated as this posterior canal BPPV. Then her spinning improved in the follow-up, but there was no improvement in her lightheadedness and the postural imbalance. I thought it could be post BPPV dizziness. That's how second visit I didn't go into the much details. I didn't go into much examination. But she came back to me again in the third visit, and she was telling me that I'm persistently feeling dizzy even after around 2-3 weeks. Suddenly a thought came in my mind where she's getting symptoms on waking up and in upright posture. So I thought of checking her pulse, blood pressure, pulse blood pressure after 3 minutes of lying down. And I checked her after immediate standing, there was a rise in her heart rate. from 77 to 103, which persisted throughout the 3 minute and 5 minute. And there was no drop in her blood pressure. Like there was no postural drop in her blood pressure. So if in a patient with orthostatic dizziness, she was feeling orthostatic dizziness. On getting up, she was feeling dizzy, lightheaded. So there was a rise in her heart rate, and there was no associated fall in blood pressure. So it satisfies criteria for something, which is I will show you a video of another patient, similar illness. Look at this video. Patient was lying down. Look at the heart rate. It was 85. It was 85 here. Just press the blood pressure. You feeling dizzy? Yeah. So in this particular patient, the heart rate went from 85 to 125. There was a rise of around 40 beats per minute, and the blood pressure was normal. Like it was checked later, and it was there was no reduction of blood pressure. Despite that, there was rise in the heart rate. So this satisfies the criteria for something called as postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome. And so there is rise in the heart rate immediately after the postural challenge, which remains sustained. And but the blood pressure and systolic and the diastolic blood pressure readings are okay. There is not much fall or change in the readings of blood pressure, and the patient feels dizzy during this time. This satisfies the criteria for postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome. If a patient has sustained heart rate increase of more than 30 beats per minute, or the heart rate increases above the absolute value of 120 beats per minute after standing, and like it should be tested up to 10 minutes, but usually in the office setting I test it for 5 minutes. But if you have set up for this head up tilt test, it can be tested for longer time. And there is no associated orthostatic hypotension. So these are the various things, and there are certain, I have read some articles where they have mentioned about post-COVID, like autonomic imbalance can happen in some patients. So in this particular patient, I suggested beta blocker to the patient, but patient she didn't get convinced to start it. And in her fourth visit, I checked her blood pressure readings, like they are improving, but they have not come back totally to normalcy. I have suggested to drink plenty of water, and beta blocker she didn't agree to, and midodrine we don't have, the drugs which are fludrocortisone or midodrine, which we don't have it here. So I told her conservative measures, and again this patient also, this is another patient, I think third or fourth out of these cases, the out of five, this is third or fourth patient who is suffering from this waking up with panic attack in the night time. This is something which I'm seeing in these patients, and dizziness is more on lying down currently. The current type of dizziness she's suffering from is on lying down. So to summarize, in this particular patient, she has history of COVID infection, recent infection. Initially, the first visit I treated her as BPPV, but she also had, I think, she had this POTS, postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome. She has headache, and which has some features of probable vestibular migraine. She has insomnia, and she is developing this post-traumatic stress disorder, maybe because of the stress which was related to the COVID infection. She is suffering from this post-stress symptoms. Even after recovery, she's undergoing this anxiety because of the psychological trauma she suffered. So these are my 5 cases of this post-COVID symptoms, vestibular symptoms. None of these patients were hospitalized for their symptoms. Like the studies also mentioned that it is independent of whether they had required hospitalization. or no hospitalization. The symptoms of headache and dizziness are common post COVID. And the days of suffering, the patients minimum like 30 days to 74 days, they were suffering from these symptoms. And these were the diagnoses. These are the my probable diagnosis. Most of them suffered from vestibular migraine. 4 of them had vestibular migraine, and this she could be having, but she had mainly BPPV and postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome. One patient had this trait of chronic fatigue syndrome. One patient had full-blown triple PD. One patient had a triple PD trait, and some patients had anxiety and depression. So it's very important to assess the patients thoroughly rather than mentioning them as non-specific symptoms of post-COVID. Like this headache and dizziness is a non-specific symptom seen in patients post-COVID. We have to try to look for a vestibular diagnosis and treat it accordingly. I thank all of you for patient listening, and I thank Sri Harsha for giving me this opportunity. Despite of his busy schedule and travel, he still manages to so that we don't miss this particular series. Thank you so much, Dr. Sri Harsha. Over to you. I think if Dr. Sri Harsha,
Yes,
yeah,
I'm here, sir.
yeah.
Luckily, I've just reached my home now.
Oh wow.
So
Okay.
we'll take up few questions from the audience.
Yeah. Before that, is it okay? Like, I would like to ask opinion from Professor Luigi. He's here.
Yes, sir.
So, his opinion regarding post-COVID, his experience in the post-COVID patients.
Thank you, Vishal. Congrats for your excellent presentation. My experience is different from yours only for the affluence of my patients. You are a neurologic, I an audiologist and ENT specialist. Our patients come to our department for prevalent real vertigo symptoms. In last year, in the COVID emergence period in our province, a little province, about 300,000 people, in a year about 5,000 COVID cases. We are the only vestibular department in our province, so I think we see all the case of suspect vertigo or sudden deafness in these patients.
Okay.
We observed in the last year, we observed not more than 10 patients, post-COVID patients suffering from BPPV, only 2 vestibular neuritis in COVID patients, and only one sudden deafness. And then too few cases to think to a direct and significant relationships between peripheral vestibular diseases or audiologic vestibular disease and COVID-19. For patients admitted in our hospital, about 1,100 during this year. Luckily, not many. We have to consider that in our hospital during this emergence period, some of just one sudden difference. For the non-acute patients, some case of complex psychological problem have few correctly reported with your great experience in this field, but sincerely, the few patients of this type I saw, the sign of dizziness was not the prevalent one, so I counseled them a psychiatric or neurological approach with look like more proper than my approach of ENT or audiologist. Migraine, really, migraine was strongly augmented in this during this period in these patients. On the contrary, many of disease patients have no significant negative effects from COVID-19 infections. You asked me for another migrainous positional vertigo. Just, yeah, right? Yes. Yes, it is very frequent, and it often looks like a cupulolithiasis. This is my experience. It is poorly responsive to liberatory maneuvers, but luckily it often solves spontaneously, and sometimes, really in a few cases, it was also its resolution was helped by triptans in an acute stage. Then, to conclude, I think that a real relationship between COVID disease and peripheral audiovestibular disease is poor in my experience. On the contrary, what you have in excellent way presented to us, it's much more interesting and real. Psychological distress of patients, of COVID patients, is one of the most important problem for non-serious cases, not hospitalized patients, not severe pulmonary problems for these patients. And I think in the next years we will observe many of these cases. Thank you, Vishal. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor, for sharing your experience. Maybe the difference in experience at different centers could be related to the strain of virus, and that could be one of the reason. One more question has come up for you. Dr. Rohiwal, he's a senior ENT surgeon from India, and he's a neurotologist. Last time also in Vertigo Talk series, he asked me this question, and he's asking that any experience.
I am reading, Vishal. Yes.
Yeah.
In experience of sudden fall in post-COVID patients were no abnormality detected by neurophysician or on peripheral vestibular assessment, it's right? Okay, but sincerely, no. I have seen no of this type of patient, that I think just one case is never significant.
Okay. That's what.
Thank you very much, Professor Luigi. The purpose of asking this question is, I had asked this question to Dr. Vishal also. We have come across 3-4 cases of sudden fall in post-COVID.
Excuse me,
in last 1 month. Maybe it is a serious
listening
strain
you
here.
Poorly. Perhaps
yes,
better if you write.
Professor, Professor, he was discussing that like in India, he has come across with cases where 3 to 4 patients he has seen they presented with drop attacks, and the neurological evaluation and the neurotological evaluation was normal. So
Yes.
I think like in my experience also before COVID also I have seen some cases of vestibular migraine presenting as drop attack.
Yes.
So do you think that these are the cases of vestibular migraine, if there is associated history of headache and dizziness, that can lead to drop attack?
But drop attack, pseudo drop attack to marking increases is a typical of ear disease. In my patients, my vestibular migraine patients, I don't remember this case. But we have to consider two things. One, the real drop attack, then a neurological disease, a neurological cause of drop, the real drop attack, and to mark increases in many patients, in many disease patients. They are two different things, one from central neurological causes, one from an acute otolytic crisis, then from a peripheral labyrinthine sufferance. I think this is very important to distinguish between these two very different forms. I prefer to mark increases in many disease patients, not drop attack or pseudo drop attack. A difference does exist. In drop attack, you live to meet, patients go down. Patients goes down. In to mark increases is pushed towards one of his side, of his side.
Yeah, agreed.
This
Agreed,
difference
agreed.
is always present, and we have to ask our patients for this difference.
We will study these cases again in more detail, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Professor, for your inputs. We will go ahead with the question answers. So there was a question by Dr. Anusha Sachdeva. What is the role of magnesium? So if you see the guidelines for preventing therapy in migraine, magnesium is one of the drug which is mentioned as I think level C evidence in patients with migraine as a prophylactic agent. And my experience over the past 2 years is that magnesium is a very good medication for prophylaxis of migraine. And yeah, and I have seen that patients like recovering, those patients especially who don't agree to take any prophylactic medication. Many a times we see patients who don't agree to take any continuous therapy. Then in those patients, it's very easy to convince them that I will start you on supplement, which will help you for this your condition. So many of the times I have started monotherapy with magnesium, like around 350 to 400 milligram dose in a day, and I have seen excellent results in patients, and even patients with vestibular migraine improving after starting monotherapy. Also in some patients, especially it works as an add-on, like add-on to our regular prophylactic agent. So that is the role of magnesium in these patients. It is a very good drug for vestibular migraine, I would say. Then Dr. Sanket Bansal, I think it decreases nervous system activity. He has tried to mention about the magnesium. Then thank you, Dr. Prakash. Then he has mentioned that Dr. Prakash has mentioned most of post-COVID patients have weakness, depression, and anxiety accounts for symptoms and not giddiness, unless it was previously your comment. See, yes, patients can have some underlying vestibular disorder which was leading to giddiness, but they can have seen some of these cases you have seen, they didn't have any vestibular symptoms prior, and they had this, like they developed these vestibular symptoms post-COVID. So it can happen like post-COVID, like even the studies I have mentioned, they mentioned that giddiness is one of the most common symptom post-COVID amongst the neurological symptoms. And patients can tell it in variety of ways, like brain fog, or they can mention it as a variety of ways, like similar to what pre-COVID also we used to experience, like patients present with variety of ways when they have these vestibular symptoms. Then coming to Dr. Cynthia is asking treatment for POTS. The treatment for postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome, ideally, we should confirm the diagnosis by doing even a tilt table test and Holter monitoring. We should rule out the tachyarrhythmias. and we should take a consultation from cardiologist. Honestly, I'm not the good person to tell about the treatment therapy for POTS. Ideally, a cardiologist should see, but whatever I have read literature, if it is originating from because of dehydration, underlying dehydration, the fluid intake should we should encourage the patient to have good fluid intake. Then there are some literature which mentioned about the role of beta blockers in these patients, then the role of fludrocortisone in these patients. So these are the various therapies which are mentioned in these patients. Then coming to the next question, that is. Is there any relationship between oxygen therapy and vestibular symptoms on COVID-19 patients? So, as I have told, there are some reviews where they have mentioned that there was no significant difference between the patients who suffered from dizziness in terms of severity of the illness. But of course, hypoxia itself can lead to symptoms of dizziness post recovery. It can there are some pathogenetic mechanisms by which the hypoxia can lead to these symptoms. And oxygen therapy, between oxygen therapy and vestibular symptoms, I can't comment on that. Whether oxygen therapy is leading to vestibular symptoms, you mean to say, or whether it will help to relieve the symptoms. I'm not sure about that question. You can comment in the chat, and then I would again come back to that. Then coming to, will vascular damage be a factor causing balance problems? Yes. See, if the vascular damage means the stroke, and post COVID-19 there is increased incidence of ischemic stroke, but that chunk of patient is very less. The patients who develop stroke, neurological complications can happen in 25% patients, and out of them, stroke is like not very common, like less than 1% as far as the literature has mentioned. And if it involves the posterior circulation, or yes, of course, it can cause balance problem. Then, sir, how long do you give magnesium? It is the answer to is something similar to prophylactic therapy for migraine. See, in migraine, there is a spectrum of patients. Some patients who have very mild migraine, occasional attacks, they don't need prophylactic therapy. If the patients are getting infrequent attacks, they don't need therapy. Just they can modify their lifestyle, avoid the triggers, and take SOS rescue medications. And there is another end of spectrum where the patients can have daily attacks, chronic daily headache because of migraine. So depending on the severity of migraine, you have to decide the duration of therapy, and that same thing is applicable for magnesium. Usually what I do is I start the therapy in patients who have more than 4 attacks per month. I start them on prophylactic medication. I try to continue it for 6 months and give a break. Like I ask them to stop and see. And there are 3 possible things which can happen after 6 months. The patient may not have attacks for years, or may have attacks which are tolerable, less than 2 attacks per month. Then they can manage with SOS analgesics. Then the second group of patients might get frequent attacks again after a remission of few months or few years. And then again, they will need another therapy for another 6 months. And that there is a third group of patients who get immediately next day or within a week, they can start getting attacks again. So in that group of patients, they need little longer therapy. So we have to individualize the therapy according to the patient symptoms, patient number of attacks of the patients. Any experience of paralytic Sir Rohiwal, sir, you can tell me, sir, what is your question, sir? Ileus, okay, paralytic ileus.
Ileus, paralytic ileus, some auto typing mistake.
Okay, so paralytic ileus post magnesium.
I came across one case.
Okay,
I just
okay.
wanted to know your opinion about. Did you had any such experience about side effect you can say of the magnesium therapy?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I have seen quite a few patients. Like, I don't know exact percentage, but maybe less than 5% patients where the patient couldn't tolerate magnesium. Like they had severe abdominal cramps or diarrhea, like loose motion. So it has GI side effects. It can cause those side effects like abdominal cramp and this thing. But paralytic ileus, I haven't seen. uh, it can happen, sir. Like it's better to avoid in that case. And in younger patients, I start very slow. Like I start with low dose, 150 milligram, and then if they can tolerate that, then only I go to the therapeutic dose, that is 400 milligram. So we have to be aware of this particular side effect. Thank you, sir. Thank you for your inputs. So I think there are no further questions. Over to you, Dr. Sriharsha.
Yes, sir. So any more questions from the audience? You can unmute and speak directly to the speaker before we wind up the session. Sir, we have Professor Logi. He's commented, I use magnesium for 5 days a week.
Oh, okay. So that could be a good strategy. Like, yes, 5 days per week, not daily.
Yeah, I think so. There are no more questions, sir. Thank you, sir. Actually, I've missed. Yeah.
I had one question, please.
Yeah, please go ahead.
You use magnesium for how long?
Yeah, that's what I was mentioning. Like, it depends on the disease severity. Like, if the migraine severity, initially I go for 6 months, and I give a break. And
Okay.
yeah.
You use this magnesium for other form of vestibular disorder other than migraine?
No, yeah, I use it only for vestibular migraine. I don't use it for other disorders.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello.
Professor Luigi is asking whether you use Cinarizine. Cinarizine is available in our country. Honestly, sir, I don't use it. But you use it as a rescue medication or a daily medication, as a prophylactic medication?
Prophylactic. As a prophylactic medication, Bishop. Together magnesium. Magnesium I prefer from the problem we have just we just talked about 5 days, not consecutive days in a week for 3, 4, 5 months. Together Cinarizine. Cinarizine 2 months, then stop for 1 month, then another 2 or 3 months.
Okay.
Dr. Vishal,
is available in your country, Vishal? Cinarizine?
Yes, sir. Yes, it is available.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Can I ask something?
Yes. Dr. Prakash, go ahead.
Basically, as I said in my chat also, most of the COVID patients post-COVID have weakness and vague symptoms of vertigo. How long do you wait to start the specific treatment, number one? And how long you wait for the symptoms to pass off its own, as we see in most of the cases, to take up for investigation?
No, I don't wait. Honestly, I just try to fit it into some diagnosis. As you have seen, one patient after patient came to me with 3 days history of symptoms. So what I do is I try to categorize what patient underlying is it fitting into underlying illness like vestibular migraine or BPPV, or it is triple PD. So I try to categorize whether it is fitting, the symptoms are fitting into some syndrome. And then if it is fitting, then if it is associated with headache, rather than I calling them as vague symptoms, I try to like go with a diagnosis and try to treat them like.
Treatment and investigation.
Yeah.
Because in 4 or 5 which you have presented, you give triptyline, that is an antidepressant. So what usually we find in our practice that most of the patient post-COVID has weakness, depression, and anxiety. And this is spontaneous remission of the symptoms. I usually wait for a week or so. If it is spontaneously remission, we don't go further. So what is your comment on that?
Yeah, in this group of patients, yes, careful follow-up we can also do. And we can wait for a week or two, and we can call the patient for follow-up. There is no harm. Like that is a very good approach, I would say, and rather than putting the patient. But if the patient is quality of life is disturbed because of the depression or because of the underlying headache or dizziness, we can take a call depending on the severity of symptoms. So yes, we can follow that approach. Yeah,
because of the crowd and the scare, we don't want our patient to go to the different labs and the investigation, and even our own exposure want to be limited. That was the point I wanted to make. Thank you. Excellent presentation.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
So shall we take any more questions, sir, from the audience?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, any more questions? I think we have covered most of the questions posted in the chat section. I believe. So yeah, I think that concludes for the day, sir. Thank you, sir. Even though I missed the initial part of your lecture, it's held up in the hospital. I'll be probably reviewing the recording soon. Thank you very much. It's a really pleasure for us for having you in our platform since 9 months. And it's indeed a great job, sir. So we'll be seeing you again next month, first Friday of every month as usual. Thank you, sir. And thank you, Professor Louis, for being part of this session.
Thank you.
Yeah. So,
See you soon, I hope.
Thank you.
In presence, of course. In presence, much better.
thank you, sir, and have a good day.
Thank you.